Hey guys, in this video I wanted to talk about how to get better at building in Valheim. First thing, there's no wrong way to build. So just get out there and build, and you are going to improve on your building skills the more you practice and the more you play around with this in the game. If you're struggling with where to start, maybe find something that you like from one of your favorite movies and try and replicate either part of it or some of that. That'll give you a base layer to build, and remember, you don't have to copy it and build it to scale. You can get creative with it, build it your own way, or just build parts of something that you saw that you really like. If you're looking to improve on your building skills and just wanting a way to practice, this is an exercise that I highly recommend. A long time ago, I came into this seed and I started building individual houses based on only using materials that you can access per each biome. So my first house is a meadows house. I'm only using materials in this build that I'm able to obtain while I'm in the meadows at that level. Not coming back with the black metal axe and being able to cut down whatever I want, but only what I would be able to at that level before I move to the next biome. This exercise forces you to be creative with the materials that are available to you, but it also reminds you of materials that sometimes you just tend to forget about or ignore as you prioritize or favoritize different materials in the game. I set some ground rules for all of my builds, so all of the houses are going to have the same requirements. They have to be something that would be livable in that biome for 2 players. That means I need 2 beds, I need a fireplace, and as many materials as I can to help my character or characters gain that max comfort that would be available at that point of the game. I tried to rely on windows as much as I could for natural lighting, in addition to what light we would receive from the fireplace. As we move house to house, probably the most noticeable change before we even enter is going to be the way we did the windows, because there's so many different creative resources that are available to you at each new level. At the end of this process, I found myself leaning on going back to older materials that I just basically stopped using because I thought they weren't as good. Just because I have a specific pattern for the way I built each of these houses in this video doesn't mean you can't create your own guidelines and rules for what you want to do for this practice. I highly recommend that. In fact, I've done this exercise 3 or 4 different times in different seeds, and I really enjoy it. It always reminds me of materials and that I'm neglecting, and sometimes I find new and creative ways to utilize the materials that became available. In one of these next builds, you can see instead of using anything with bins, I started to use barrels for storage units for the first time possible because of a very tight nook and cranny corner, and I've started to experiment with that more moving forward in my builds. One thing I'd like to try in the future is getting a 24 by 24 square space set out inside the meadows and starting to repeat this same process, except instead of building separate builds, I would start my first one using meadows materials and then simulate the process of actually upgrading the same house one biome at a time. So I'd start taking out some walls, upgrading them to core wood, and so on and so forth as I theoretically am unlocking new materials in each biome and am able to apply more upgrades to that build. With this scenario, I'm really curious to see, once I get to the end, what materials from which biomes actually survived the test of time, stayed behind, and gave my builds a really cool aesthetic. In this specific exercise, one of my biggest challenges was smoke ventilation, and I think this Grouston build from using Ashlands materials is my favorite. It looks so decorative and it's really cool, and I've really started to utilize this in a lot of my builds for smoke ventilation now, because it's not very awkward and intrusive of the build. Obviously the interior is a little bit different, but in this tiny build I had to work with the space that was available. This is also where I started using the barrel shelving unit instead of the standard box unit. It makes a really great corner storage system, and you're really able to shove those barrels in there to take up a lot of space. The only downside is if you like to label your bins with signs, this method doesn't quite work the same, quite as efficient for that. Once I got to the end, I wanted to try one more build. I wanted to apply all the skills that I took from all of these, but also build this using the same size, the smallest house possible, with the maximum comfort available in the game. So in this build, I have every single comfort item that you can think of. And what I really wanted to do was just make the interior very simple and hide everything. Now it's kind of ugly because again, I was limited by space, but the really cool thing is I'm using these Growston walls with the holes so that I can access all my benches behind the walls instead of having them inside the interior. I also have hidden all of the upgrades so I don't have to look at those, and almost all of the comfort level upgrades are also hidden. I didn't go through and kind of tidy up and neaten up the corners in here. I could probably make the ceiling look a little bit better and some of these extra gaps, but of course this is just an exercise, and this was the very first one I did where I tried to cram all of this stuff in for all the maximum workbenches and maximum comfort, and using that bin storage corner that I just learned. You can kind of see as I dip through where all of this stuff is starting to stick out where I hit it, as well as I really love this corner hot tub hideaway fueling station. That was probably the hardest part of this whole process, is making sure I had a way to actually fuel that so I could get that comfort 19 in this build. The ceiling actually came out really clean and flat, except for this back corner, which I would probably build on top of later on, but these are just those last few things that were sticking out the roof. The really important thing there was for the hot tub ventilation to smoke out of the top so that doesn't get trapped in the interior. One thing I didn't have the space to include in these builds that I started to experiment with afterwards was armor and weapon displays. So stay tuned for more videos, and maybe one of these will make it to the next set. Hope you guys enjoyed, and enjoy the game.